Since the implosion of the Soviet Union, several states have disappeared. The German Eastern Republic, of course, Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia. And Norman Davies is a bit worried about Belgium, I must say.
Not worried, not worried.
Not worried? No, okay. And EU, as a schoolboy, read about the British Empire, where the sun never set, is now quite worried. There you're really worried about the future of the United Kingdom. That doesn't seem to be so united as it once seems to be. The Scotsmen are on the move again. Mr. Davies, reading your book, one must conclude that states seldom die off quietly. But first, I'll go to Luuk, who has read the book. And Luuk, what impression did the book make on you? Because you're in your daily task, also as an advisor to Herman Van Rompuy, Europe is your greatest concern. What did you learn about Europe in this book?
Well, I read it first of all, let's say, as a historian, because it's very much also a book about searching, about how you can find all these things back. And it is a real challenge, of course, to write about stage which we have forgotten about. Because most history is about the past of things that are there. That is the reason why we are interested in them often. For instance, the history of Belgium, or whereas Mr. Davies's history is taking the thing the other way around and bring back to life things, entities that no longer exist. When I look at the European point of view, what jumps to mind is the sheer variety of this history, full of peoples, languages, and I think that is very much, of course, a characteristic of our continent, this sheer variety. But there is something else, and which interests me also because of the way I look at history, and that is that it's systematic undermining of the self-evidence of the present. Usually we look at the world around us and we take it for granted. And many historians, when they write history books, they even help us. And they explain why things have come about as they did, to make them even more self-evident. It could not be otherwise. But Norman Davies is of another school, which is also my favorite school, and it is to undermine this self-evidence of the present. He does so by focusing very much on how states, all human institutions, can come to an end. And I think it's this look at the history, undermining the self-evidence of the present, also helps to open up the future, as it were. Because if the past is not self-evident, why should the future be? It means that also the world ahead of us, the time ahead of us, can be different and probably will be different from what we think it will be. So the nostalgic trait of looking at vanished kingdoms also actually has a corollary in a sort of optimism in the way you can look at the future.
Professor Davies, what did your work, your research learn you about the actual state of Europe? When you look at these old kingdoms, do you think, well, some of these differences that were there in Europe in those days are coming back again to haunt us, or what?
I didn't write this book in order to comment on the present, although I'm very often asked about it.
But you knew that it would be inevitable.
Absolutely. The most usual question now is the European Union a vanished or vanishing kingdom? Or is the United Kingdom a vanishing kingdom? But I try to emphasize that history starts from a point where the present is unknown. I don't have in mind the destination of the narrative. I can see that this book is very subversive to people who think that the present is clear and well known and obvious. But that wasn't my aim when I started writing it.
What was your aim then?
To enjoy myself. The collapse of the Soviet Union was a major provocation to explore the theme further. I've been working in Eastern Europe for nearly 50 years, and the Soviet Union was the biggest elephant in the zoo, and you couldn't imagine that that would disappear quickly, and it went up in smoke. And that was a big source of the motivation to explore this theme further. I think Gorbachev, he succeeded in doing something which he didn't want to do, namely dismantle the Soviet Union, and it happened in this extraordinarily bloodless way. But it wasn't by calculation, I'm sure. It was, there's all sorts of things happened that you'd never think of.
And that is one of the questions also in a more future perspective.
Concerning Belgium?
No, I was as a Dutchman in Belgium, I'm always very cautious to talk about Belgium, but I was more thinking, which I also have to be cautious, but about the United Kingdom and the Scottish referendum.
You've talked about it several times, about the possible breakup of the United Kingdom. What do you expect, in fact?
I can see several possibilities. A lot depends on whether the...
First of all, do you think it's inevitable?
Absolutely not, no. It's possible that Scotland will break away. I don't think yet it's probable. That depends on the politics of the next year. But a great deal depends on the conduct of the stronger partner, namely the British government, which has force available. To my surprise, David Cameron has already agreed that there should be a Scottish referendum on independence. He agreed that there should be one. He then tried to control the terms of it, and he didn't succeed, but he's still in agreement that the referendum should take place. This is very different from what's happened in Spain. The government in Madrid is saying that the Catalans can't have a...
They even threatened them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the conduct of the stronger party is always the key.
Yeah. Well, in one of your recent interviews you said that you're very gloomy about the future of Europe, and you've been quoted saying that for you the problem of the European Union is one of failed governance. Mm-hmm. Could you expand on that, and then I'll let Luuk reply to that.
Luuk,
because one is in fact one of the members of the government.
knows a lot more about it. But yes, I think the present crisis is more political in nature than economic or financial. It's the inability to deal with problems rather than the nature of the problems themselves.
The Union would probably need a big crisis.
Yes.
To think it all over again. Well, we had the big crisis.
Well, I'm not certain that we have. I think it may have to get worse before people's minds will be...
But if you wanted to go worse, I have bad news. It's going better.
Are you saying now that the sense of urgency is gone?
No. I'm saying that because I agree with Professor Davies, we are in the domain of history, so it's about possibilities, probabilities, and not necessities. I think that what I'm saying is that the probability of a collapse of the Eurozone, which 1 year ago, when you read some of the English and American press, was not a matter if it's going to happen, but when, and 12 months later, you don't read that anymore. I think that the existential threat to the Eurozone is now behind us. And that also, to some extent, this political test has been faced and gone through.
We're coming back to the question.
Yes.
That the Eastern European countries have more at stake in keeping the EU together than the Western countries? The feeling is still there in the Eastern European countries that this big neighbor, Russia, they're not very confident.
Absolutely. The memory of their former captivity, that's how they see it, is still very strong. And there's a lot of anxiety that if things go wrong in the European Union, then the old dangers will revive, in particular Russia and under.
Is it a real danger?
I think it's exaggerated. I had the pleasure actually of meeting Mr. Putin a couple of years ago. My impression, such as it's worth, is that Putin seriously wants to improve relations with Eastern Europe because he has so many other things to worry about. If from Moscow's point of view, the Caucasus or China is, looms much larger than the problems in Eastern Europe. But of course, Eastern Europeans don't feel that way. What they see is the Great Bear still there, growling, and they're worried that at some point, if the European club doesn't protect them, then they'll be vulnerable once again.
And who has a new weapon except tanks now? He has gas and oil.
Absolutely, yes.
Coming back to that nationalism, isn't in fact, although it doesn't want to do it, but isn't Europe driving some of that nationalism, driving some of these regions to nationalism by installing things like the fiscal compact, six-pack, two-pack, where these richer regions have now the impression that they're paying twice. First, they already paid for the internal transfers, and now they pay a second price to get the budgets in order. That's what's happening in Catalonia.
Rik, this is your most Flemish question of the evening.
Well, could have been a Catalan question. Or suit the role.
Well, I think what the European Union does with regionalisms is something else, and that it makes it much easier to be a regionalist within the framework of the overall European Union. And I think that's much more important as a factor of it than current policies, be it austerity or others. To come back to the favorite example of the evening, Scottish regional nationalism would probably have much less support if it was not embedded in a European Union of which the Scottish nationalists think they would automatically be part of it. Because otherwise it would be to be out there in the jungle with, how many are there? I don't, between 5 and 10 million?
Yeah. Nearly 6.
Nearly 6, well, with 6 million out in the jungle. So the European Union makes it easier in a way to have a regional, this regional self-assurance as a background of stability.
Just to round it up, although you're a bit skeptic, I would say, about the future of Europe, you still think that the member states are better off being member of the European Union than they would be as non-members?
Absolutely. I think the many aspects of world affairs are now decided in big blocks, and small, isolated countries are simply unable to function on their own in competition with these 5 or 6 big blocks: the United States, Russia, China, India, Brazil. I think any European country which was to cut itself adrift of the club would be in deep trouble. And of course this is exactly the message that Obama sent to Cameron the day after he made his speech. The United States does not want the United Kingdom to leave the European Union, and the American president warned Cameron that leaving the European Union would be a disaster.
So ladies and gentlemen, this was the evening. But both authors, Mr. Davies, Mr. Van Middelaar, thank you, but they're all ready to sign their books who are on sale over there.